everybody. Welcome. There we go. How's everybody doing? Welcome to a special edition of Put It Together. It is Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, and we're talking about different cancers that affect folks. Yes, folks. Sorry, my brain went somewhere else there for a second. For everybody watching, thank you for watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn. If you're watching on those channels, please won't you share this on your page so that other folks can watch along with you. If you're watching us on YouTube, do me a favor, scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell and let you know every time there's a new show on our channel. And remember, we got different channels throughout, different shows throughout the week. If you're watching us on Instagram, hello to our Instagram friends. And although your comments can't appear on our StreamYard, we're keeping an eye on that channel, making sure that we see you if you have any comments or questions for our guests today. It is, again, Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And in those also falls anal cancer, which we will have an anal cancer awareness show next week. So make sure you stay tuned for that. That'll be Friday, March 21st. So if you've been watching the series, it'll be one more in the series for next week. Plus, we invite anybody, if you are watching and you have a diagnosis, it doesn't have to be cancer, and you want to share your story. If you are either an advocate, an activist, a survivor, a thriver, a doctor, a researcher, scientist, anybody within any of the medical fields, any diagnosis, please come on the show and share your story with us. This week, I'm very excited. He's a friend of mine. We met recently, not too long ago. Joe Bullock's journey with cancer began in May of 2018, when at the age of 50, he was diagnosed with stage 3B colorectal cancer following a routine colonoscopy. His focus had been on grieving the loss of both his parents, who passed away just 6 months apart in 2017. During the procedure, his gastroenterologist at Duke Hospital discovered 2 polyps and a 10-centimeter tumor in his colon. Within weeks, he underwent surgery and began chemotherapy. The physical and mental toll of cancer was immense, but Joe found strength in therapy and his medical team. By February 2019, his scans showed no evidence of disease, which we call NED. Inspired by his journey, Joe joined Men Up to Cancer, a nonprofit founded by Trevor Maxwell, to provide emotional support to men facing cancer. Today, as the Chief Operating Officer, Joe connects men through online communities, retreats, and support initiatives to help them face cancer together. His mission is to change the way men approach cancer, not just the fight to survive, but as a journey to live fully, no matter the diagnosis. I love it. And let me just say, I had to cut down his bio because he has a huge, interesting bio. But without further ado, let me bring him over. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you joining you today. So
yeah, thank you. I was going to say your bio was too big for this show. We had to cut it down.
Cut it down. Too funny.
So I was thinking, we technically did meet through the Men Up to Cancer group, right?
Yes, we did. We did. You've been a part of the group for a few years. Like, I think I'm not sure how long, but I know you've been around for a while.
Yeah.
I think the impact. I think you learned the impact of it when you came to the Gathering of Wolves, one of our programs, over a year ago. I think that was really what the impact was for you. And we can talk more about that later. But so, like I said in my bio, I'm almost a 7-year survivor of stage 3B colorectal cancer. I went to a colonoscopy at the urging of my wife because I had some symptoms, but I had been ignoring them for many reasons I mentioned in my bio. And I walked out of that colonoscopy a cancer patient. And it really was a life-changing experience. And part of the reason Man Up to Cancer has become so important to me was because of what I was actually the caregiver for my dad, who was battling late-stage prostate cancer a year before I was diagnosed. So I saw how isolated he was. He didn't want any friendships. He kept to himself. And I really saw how it affected his mental health. It affected how he approached his cancer, even to the point of giving up, even going through treatment because of that isolation. And then seeing, and as I got diagnosed with cancer, and feeling some of those same mental health issues and depression and things that honestly I was not expecting going through treatment. I wasn't at all someone who thought of myself as a depressed person. Um,
Right.
I was a pre-K teacher actually before getting diagnosed with cancer. Um, and had so I was a pretty happy-go-lucky guy. I mean, you can't be depressed and lead 20, 25, 5 year olds, right? You got to be on it and be happy and be, and it was, I almost pretty much got, I was trying, when I first got diagnosed, I was trying not to acknowledge it around my students and parents. I was really trying to hide the aspect of my life. But they quickly learned that something was up with Mr. Joe. The kids were very,
Kids
they
are very
clued in pretty
smart.
quickly that something was wrong with Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe didn't seem as happy. Mr. Joe, that's exactly from the kids. So why aren't you happy, Mr. Joe? Why do you look so pale at times? You seem like you're sick. And so I had to very quickly. I couldn't hide anymore as a teacher. I had to kind of pretty much acknowledge, my diagnosis, and I was going through chemo and explaining that to 5 year olds. You talk about opening up. I had to quickly acknowledge my diagnosis and to help them understand my process, and that Mr. Joe was going to be okay, and that because for a lot of those kids, it was more like, colorectal cancer is like the old man's disease, right? And even anal cancer, like they don't see a young person getting diagnosed with these diseases, and for these kids, all they knew about cancer is that somebody died, either it was a grandfather or grandmother or aunt. And it was interesting to see them go through the process with me, and for them to see me kind of come out on the other side of it.
Gotcha.
So, during that period.
So before we continue too much, I want to make sure that folks understand watching what colorectal cancer is. So I put together this
Yes.
little blurb and make sure that they understand. So we're all on the same. So colorectal cancer is a type of cancer that begins in the colon or rectum. Symptoms may include changes in bowel habits, blood in the stool, abdominal pain, and unexplained weight loss. Early detection through screenings like colonoscopies is crucial, and it can prevent cancer by identifying and removing polyps before they become malignant. Treatment
Exactly.
options typically include surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and targeted therapies, depending on the stage and location of the cancer. So, with that part, then I want to start asking, Joe Bullock, how would you put it together?
Well, it's funny because I had a lot of symptoms early on, those first couple of years. I remember going to my general practitioner in probably my mid 40s and started talking about some of these symptoms. Like I was having some GI issues. I thought it was because I was a pre-K teacher and you're around kids and kids bring germs into school. And I thought, well, maybe I'm going to have all these upset stomachs and stomach flus just being around the kids, right? And then as I slowly started seeing some amount of blood in my stool, and I would tell my general practitioner, and he'd be, "Oh, you probably have hemorrhoids. You're not that active." And I thought, well, I'm a pre-K teacher, so I'm pretty active, So just started questioning things, but I still didn't come out and ask. I wasn't educated enough at that point as a patient to really be able to say, well, could this be colorectal cancer? Are these a sign? Are these symptoms of that? I didn't even know what that was. And it wasn't until probably about 3, 4 years later that I turned 50. And when I I was pretty good about going to my yearly, like annual physicals. And my doctor was always like, maybe you need to change your diet, or maybe it's you need to be more active, or you're overweight. But it wasn't until that in 2018, the screening age was 50. Now we know the screening age is 45. But at that point, when I went in for that in 2018, when I went for that appointment, my doctor had said to me, well, actually, take that back. In 2017, when I went in for that annual physical, and I had just about to turn 50, he said, "Okay, we need to get you your colonoscopy." And I didn't know what that meant until I remember getting home that day because and I remember looking up colonoscopies, and I came across Katie Couric, right? Because of her husband, and I knew that her husband had died. So then I freaked out because I thought I was going to die. So,
Okay.
it's just things when you start to go into that deep dive of Google. And in fact, I met with Katie Couric recently at a golf tournament in Arizona, um, through the Cologuard Golf Classic. But she was the first person, I jokingly say she showed us the internet and she showed us what a colonoscopy was. Or if you know, if you follow her. Um, so, after I'd gone for that colonoscopy, and actually, I was actually awake during my colonoscopy, because I had had some issues with being sedated, and so I had when I was younger, actually, well, it goes back to cancer. I had a scare with testicular cancer when I was younger, in my 20s, and I just had to have surgery to remove um, an undescended testicle, and everything was fine. There was no
Okay.
cancer involved, but I didn't come out of the anesthesia very well. It
Oh,
took me almost an hour to come out of the anesthesia, and it freaked out my wife at the time. We'd only been married for like a month. Um, so when I went in for the colonoscopy, I explained that to the doctor, and I said, I think I'd rather not be put under because I don't want to scare her. Um, and so I opted to do the uh, twilight, and be somewhat awake. I didn't feel anything was going on. In fact, I was so wiped out from the prep the night before that I pretty much fell asleep within like 5 minutes. But I did wake up during the colonoscopy, and I remember looking. I could see the screen beside me, and I remember pointing at the tumor, and I remember telling the
wow.
doctor that, and the doctor said I was really. The doctor said it looked like you were like looking at. I said I felt like I was looking at a computer screen, so I wasn't sure if that was my colonoscopy or if I was looking at Google because I had Googled so much, and, and I saw that 10 centimeter like meatball tumor hanging
Wow.
off the side of my colon, and I remember saying to him, I said, "That's cancer. I know that's cancer." And, he had to get me because I was starting to hyperventilate, and he had to get me calmed down a bit. And I think I fell back to sleep after that point, actually. And I woke up back in the waiting room, because I could hear him tell me, "We're going to get you." At the time, he had told me he had gotten around that tumor up through the rest of my colon. Everything was good. They removed those precancerous polyps and tagged and marked the tumor, and that we would talk more. And then I remember just falling back to sleep. And then once we got back to the waiting room, he was able to explain to me what we were looking at and what the path forward would be, which
Gotcha.
obviously would be for me was a surgery to remove that cancerous tumor. I was lucky in a sense that it was in what he called the sweet spot of the sigmoid region. So they were able to just remove that part of my colon and reattach it. So I didn't have to have an ileostomy or an ostomy or anything. Um, but then they removed 40 lymph nodes along the track that they removed of the colon, and three of those were found to be cancerous. So that put me into doing 6 months of chemotherapy or cleanup chemo, to hopefully prevent, because it was in my lymphatic system at that point. So we were trying to prevent any spread of the cancer.
Gotcha.
Um,
And let me make a small note just for folks who are watching. I know we have a lot of friends from the cancer community watching who understand what PrEP and colonoscopies are. But for
yeah,
those of you who are not part of it,
right.
um, let me just explain a little bit what a
Yeah,
colonoscopy is. So
yeah,
basically, it's a hose with a little camera that normally goes up the rectum into your colon to check for polyps, tears, uh, tumors, anything that could cause any problems. And the prep, I think the prep is way worse than colonoscopy. For those, a prep,
the prep is awful.
I call it, well, it's in different forms now, but when I was doing it, it was the juice thing. So I call it the
Yeah,
devil juice. Uh, but it's either in a drink, it's a gallon drink, a single drink, or pills
yeah,
now too. And you take
yeah,
these, and basically what it does, it wrings out your intestines
yeah, yeah.
and
Exactly, exactly,
so that you can be clean
exactly.
for the colonoscopy. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. I cannot go. I've had four done since I was diagnosed, and I cannot go near a bottle of Gatorade because I use the Gatorade, the yellow Gatorade. Yeah, I can't even go
Yeah.
near it. because I've used it so much for prep
Uh,
and for it. And yeah, exactly. And my doctor would be like, "Well, if it's yellow going in, as long as it's yellow coming out, you're good." Because I always think, "Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be ready?" He's like, "As long as it's yellow coming out, you're good. You're good to
yeah.
go," kind of thing.
And
So
for those of you, I am not laughing at Joe. I'm laughing in solidarity because I've been through it. So unless you've been through these things,
you
you
have to laugh.
understand
Yeah.
and laugh. Uh, so you go through the treatment. Obviously, spoiler alert, he survived. Uh,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
how did you know at the time how to put together your support team? How were you mentally, physically, and spiritually ready for it?
Oh, I was really a very good patient. Like my wife's an RN at Duke Cancer Center. Pretty much when I got diagnosed, it was like showing up for my wedding. It was like, go stand here, go see this doctor, go do this. Like it wasn't there really. It was almost I was almost like robotic, almost to a certain
Okay.
point, where I was just sort of not shut down, but I was just trying to gut through it. Like I thought, okay, I need to get from point A to point B, and then I'll deal with that. So and I was never told. One thing good for me is I was never told my cancer wasn't curable, because yeah, I was stage 3, and I had no genetic disposition for my cancer, so we knew pretty much early on that it was going to be curable. I just had to get to that point, um, and that was to get through chemo. But it wasn't until I actually started chemo that no one warned me really about the side effects to chemo, and also the depression that came with it. Like I'm someone that really enjoys a good meal. Like I love to cook. Something our family loves to do together. And one of the side effects of chemo was the loss of taste.
Yeah.
So good food, there was no more good food during chemo. It was gone. So for me, that really sent me in a state of depression that I was not expecting at all. So it's basically what it was, and I didn't even realize this till later that this was part of my depression. Was the food was part of that, a lack of good food was a part of that, and then so probably about the second round of chemo, I had lost like a good 40 pounds, like within like 6 weeks, and my doctor saw quickly when I went in that day to get ready for chemo and did my blood work and my scan work and went to see him to make sure I was ready for that. He came in the room and he had the papers and stuff and he was waiting for another result from one of my scans, and he just sat everything down and he said, "You are not the same person who walked in this door 5 months ago. I told you I've got this. But right now, I'm seeing a totally different person that's broken and worried constantly about his diagnosis. You just look unhappy. Just he was like, at that moment, he was like, I need to treat you as a person and not a disease." And so luckily, Duke has a nonprofit arm at that cancer center that deals with mental health and offers certain programs and therapies for their patients. So that day, a therapist happened to be on that hallway. And he was like, my oncologist was like, "Can I just bring her in here? And can she just sit beside you?" Because I was at that point thinking I was fine. I don't need anybody. I just need to gut through this. Just get me to the next session, get me to the next treatment. Um, and then, so he brought her in and she sat down and she starts telling me all about these programs and stuff. And then she asked me, "How are you?" And at that point, something clicked and I just kind of regurgitated. Well, my wife had said to her, "He needs to talk to you. He may not think he needs to talk to you, but he needs to talk to you." Because my wife was in the room with us. And so within probably about 10 minutes or so of her discussing the program, stuff like that, I finally just kind of regurgitated all of it, and ended up doing therapy for about pretty much all run of my treatment. It was about 8 months of therapy. I started going to a support group at the cancer center. That was a GI cancer support group specifically for GI cancer patients. And that really helped me understand what my needs were, but also clearly made me understand that men weren't getting that support. because I would go to these support groups, and typically the men that were in there were either forced to be in there by their spouses, because at the same support group there was actually a caregiver support group going on.
Okay.
So a lot of the men that were there because their partner or spouse was in the caregiver room, and they were like, "Yeah, we better show up." Or they're, I remember this one meeting I went to one time. So it was me and there's three guys in the meeting. It was me and another guy who were kind of both the same. Like we just felt like we were just sort of here because our spouses wanted us to be there. And then there was another guy, and he had a list of questions or things that. So we both were like, "Good, we don't have to say anything." They'll ask him all the questions because he's got that list, And anyway, but my therapist wouldn't let us get away with that because she was the type of person that would go around the room saying, "Well, how are you doing today?" She wouldn't even give you the opportunity not to talk, right? But that really, you know, showed me that the lack of mental health space for men in the cancer community, and I saw quickly, learn that there was a need there. There was a need there, but I didn't know how to make that happen. Um, but to have met Trevor Maxwell, who is also fighting stage 4 colorectal cancer, Trevor and I met through another online support group, and he had just posted something one day about men and mental health and how do you face your cancer as a man. And I responded pretty much what I said now, and he quickly reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea about Man Up to Cancer. I'm building this structure. Would you be interested in helping me build a social content for it?" And that's kind of how we got together. And that was back in the fall of 2019. And then we greenlit what is now Man Up to Cancer / the Howling Place group on Facebook for men going through cancer. And in January 1st of 2020. And we've been building that ever since, over the last 5.5 years, building that community out. The Facebook group it's now, there's about 3,200 men in the group.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have three programs. We have a chemo care backpack program because, we really wanted the guys to have what they need to go into battle. That's really why we decided to do that. And so the guys that join the support group can also apply to receive a backpack. And a lot of the guys, they just take them to the treatment centers. They're ready to battle. And then we obviously have the Gathering of Wolves program that you were a part of, where it's just a 4-day retreat of guys just hanging out together, sharing their stories at campfires. But also the guys can play pickleball, basketball. We have a heated pool. We have several activities going on, music therapy, art therapy. So we're excited about that program. And then we have about 50, really now globally, we have 50 chapter groups in the United States. We have like 5 in Canada, 1 in the UK, Ireland, Europe, and we're also now just started a group in Australia. So, we've become more global as we've grown. Next month, we're going live with our new community using the Circle app. We'll be moving away from Facebook, slowly moving away from Facebook. It's not, Facebook group isn't going anywhere, but we're giving men another opportunity to join the community, because we acknowledge that a lot of men don't do Facebook and aren't on social media. So we even create an even more private space for them as well.
By the way, this is the website for everybody watching. That is the picture of the last Gathering of the Wolves. This is the first one that I went to. By the way, if you go on the site and you look for me, you will not find me, because I was so short that I'm stuck lost behind somebody. But if you find the guy in the yellow shirt, I am next to the guy in the yellow shirt, behind a tall guy, just so you know that I was there. But that's the website to join. And by the way, there's different chapters, and you, depending on where you are in the country. I'm in the Southern California group, but definitely check out. I'm going to just scroll through the page a little bit so people can see. There are some of the PAC folks. There is a video of the last Gathering of the Wolves.
And this is this is the third gathering of wolves. So we've grown. Like the first one had about 50 men come to it. And when those 50 men came to that gathering of wolves, the first one, they were like, well, how can I take this and do this at home? Like, how can I get my friend at home to come to something? And so that's why we started the chapter groups. Because that's the question they asked us leaving the retreat. So we thought, well, we've got to make sure these guys are equipped to do that. So we started these chapter groups. Don Hegelson, who's on one of our board members, who's a 3-time cancer survivor, oversees and directs those chapter groups, and they're growing every day. But it's these guys that get together and they go out for coffee or go watch a game, go get a drink together, have dinner together, and we try to fund these little meetups throughout the year. We've even had some mini like gathering of wolves where the guys have rented like an Airbnb, and we tried to support it and have like a small weekend out, guys weekend out together kind of thing. And we
Nice.
tried to support those things as well. So,
Um, is it? I mean, it was announced already on social media. So can we announce?
oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah. So I'm now the interim executive director for Man Up to Cancer, in a position, and really the position is being held so that we can actually find a permanent executive director. Because Trevor and I started this 5 years ago, really on bubblegum, shoestring, and duct tape, literally. Neither one of us had ever built a social community before. Trevor is a journalist. Trevor, by trade, he did have a PR firm that he was building before he got diagnosed with cancer. So he took his knowledge and ability to build that structure and basically turned it into what is now Man Up to Cancer. Um, and in the midst of in the beginning of all that, and Trevor and I have kind of always been back and forth because I was the one that was always no evidence of disease. Like I had been out of treatment when we started this. But Trevor Maxwell, our founder, who is battling stage 4 colorectal, has always been in and out of treatment. So the whole, he's the founder. He's the, you know, um, president of Man Up to Cancer. But over the years, we've kind of been back and forth because he would go off in treatment, and then I would kind of take care of things, and then we'd go back and forth. So that's really been our role in all of this together. But we both acknowledge that we've hit the ceiling of what we can do, and really to take what we want to do and to be able to even reach more men, we need someone to come in that has that nonprofit experience and knows how to
awesome.
build it out even more, to become, to be able to offer even more services to men going through cancer. And we
And
acknowledge that we need
for
to further grow for further growth, future growth, and
and just
also for
to
Trevor to be the founder, to be able to build a legacy. A lot of that was building the legacy for him as
which I'm
well.
waiting for Trevor to get feel better so he can come on the show and talk about his
Yes.
story. But for those of you, Man Up to Cancer is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping men avoid isolation during their cancer journey. They offer peer-to-peer support, an annual retreat, chemo backup program, and local chapters, all geared towards improving the quality of life of the members and changing the way men go through cancer. I wish I'd known about this when I started my cancer journey. I would have been
Yeah.
a, I would have been a pain in the butt asking all kinds of questions and being involved in like no pun intended, but okay, total pun intended, total pun intended. Um, so we're down to the half of the show. For anybody watching, if you have any questions for Joe on his journey, please feel free to ask the questions on whatever channel you're watching on. We'll make sure to bring them up. But there's some things sometimes we don't want to talk about this in public, or we don't talk to other people. We don't talk about the rough times. We don't talk about those
Yeah.
hard times. Like you were talking about depression.
Yeah.
What was the lowest point for you during your cancer journey?
I think the lowest point for me, well, so it's interesting. So I have a dog. Her name is Sandy. She's actually my daughter's dog. But at the time that I got diagnosed, she kind of became my emotional support animal. So this past year, she's actually had a couple of battles with cancer herself. She's a sweet little pit bull. They found cancer in her leg, and they actually found a cancerous tumor on her head. Luckily, through they were both operable, and she's fine. But I remember when I came home from the colonoscopy that day, and I remember, and it wasn't necessarily a low point, but I felt like, when you hear the word cancer, you automatically think you're dying, right? That's how I felt when the doctor told me I had cancer. All I knew is that anyone that I have ever known with cancer has died. I had a close friend that died from brain cancer. I had another friend that died from liver cancer. So that was my mindset coming home from the colonoscopy. And that we didn't really want to acknowledge that to anybody. I didn't want to tell my wife that because I didn't want her to think that I was thinking those thoughts. But I remember we had just adopted Sandy. Like she'd only been a part of our family for a couple of weeks, and my wife and my teenage children at the time were out in the backyard playing with Sandy, and I was just recuperating from the colonoscopy. I remember looking out that window and looking at my wife, who is a very accomplished woman, and I thought to myself, she'll be fine. I'm not worried about mortgage. I'm not worried about finances. You know, she'll be okay. She'll be able to carry it. My kids were older, so if they were to lose their dad at this moment, they would be okay, right? My daughter was already her first year of college. My son was entering high school. But what I quickly understood is that I wasn't okay with them losing me, right? And it kind of helped me get more of a fight and not feel like I was giving up. It took time. Like honestly, I still had feelings like that, but that's kind of where the what I talked about earlier, the robotic guy who was just sort of going through the motions and doing what I was being told. I really started internalizing a lot of it. So that kind of changed things for me, where it did give me more of a fight. Um, there was a moment, as I said, with the oncologist, where that was probably my low point, where I just felt very sad, very broken, very out of control. Because I think before that, I was able to kind of control things that were going on, like who my doctor was and what the treatment was. But then at that point, things were out of control because my body was having all these issues with side effects, and I would be like hot and cold and sweaty and felt like I was just going through a constant flu, and I couldn't control anything anymore. And I think that was part of the depression that was coming on, is I couldn't deal with any of it, or didn't know how to deal with it because I'd never dealt with it before. And it was hard to acknowledge. It's hard for us men to acknowledge we need help. So part of that was just sort of accepting that I needed help and asking for help and getting support from my therapist. Um, so if that was the low, but that was probably the low point, was it kind of me having to give up and acknowledge that I was definitely not able to handle things myself anymore.
And that's one thing I
Because
talk about in my presentations when I do cancer
yeah,
presentations. And part of my platform has always been an advocacy about education and making sure that
yeah,
client patients are educated. And
yeah,
I so connect with you on that. Okay, let me say this. I've always said that it doesn't matter what culture you come from, there is a level of machismo
right,
involved. We're all a
right,
little macho. I don't care what color
yeah,
you are. We're all a little macho. And
right,
as
exactly,
men, we some of us of a certain generation, okay, over 50, we are taught like you're a boy and you're a man and
yeah,
don't cry and
yeah,
take it like a man and be
yeah,
strong. And we
yeah,
grow on that foundation. And when we're at our weakest, when you're going through chemo, when you're going through radiation, all these things, we
yeah,
still can't comprehend that we can't do it on our own. And I think it
exactly,
becomes an inner battle with
yeah,
the helpless version of us and the
yeah,
macho version of us. Uh, and it's so difficult because even for me, it was so difficult to be like, I got this. Like I got this.
yeah,
Like I can do this. I threw a,
yeah,
I threw a, I'll say this. I threw a dinner party right in
uh-huh,
the middle of my chemo and radiation treatment. What was
right,
I thinking? But yeah,
right. Well, I for men, a lot of it for us is the loss of our identity. Like, I know for me, really a turning point for me was my daughter was entering her second year of college, and so the first year of her college, there was no cancer, right? I hadn't found out yet, and so I was able to do all the things that dads do when you're my wife and daughter, we got to her dorm room. She would go up to the dorm room, and they decide where everything was going to go in the dorm room and how they were going to decorate, right? Well, dad's job is to lug all the stuff out of the car, the U-Haul, into the room. And so the second year, when I was starting treatment, I think I'd been around through my second course of treatment. I was thinking I was be able to do the same thing. I thought I'll be able to. They'll go up to her room and they'll decide where things are going to go. So it was a different dorm room, and my son and I will get things out of the car and bring them up to the dorm room. Well, I couldn't even get up the steps because of the neuropathy.
Oh,
So for me, that was just like I can't even do what I'm supposed to do as a husband and father right now, right? And that was just I just sat there. My son had to go tell my wife, "Dad can't even get up the steps." Because there were some steps, several steps to get into the dorm, and I couldn't even do that. The neuropathy was so bad. So that was hard. It was hard for me at the moment to acknowledge that. It was hard for me to sit there while they did all the work because I felt like my purpose as a husband, as a father, was just wiped out at that moment. And of course, my family was supportive. My wife was like, "No, you don't need to worry about it. You're going through this, that, and the other." But for me personally, it was hard, to have to acknowledge that I couldn't do something, right? That role. And we have a lot of men in our group who, because of cancer, they lose their jobs. I've had airline pilots lose their jobs. I've had firefighters and police officers have to stop their jobs because because of the neuropathy in their hands and their feet. They can't do the job, right? And so they have to rethink how they're. And these aren't men that are stage 4. Like these aren't men that are stage 4 where you think, oh, well, you're cancer, you go on disability. These are men who are in lower stage cancers who can't do their jobs because of these
yep.
issues, as well. So that was a harsh reality for me. And I remember like even a couple weeks later, we had gone to a family day, and I couldn't even get through on a day where your child wants you to meet all the professors and walk around campus and meet all her friends and stuff like that. I can't even do that. I lasted maybe an hour that day, and my wife was like, "Maybe you just need to go back to the hotel room and take a nap and come back for dinner," right? Because I was basically slowing them down
Right.
that day, and so being able to going through all that process, and again losing that identity or it being taken away from you, and you never get those times back, right? I'll never get that day back from what cancer stole from me that day.
Joe, let me ask you this because we're coming to the 40-minute point, but
Yeah,
I always believe that it's in the valleys of our timeline that we
yeah,
learn the biggest lessons.
yeah.
What were some of the lessons that you've learned in your cancer journey?
Um, I think really opening up my heart, really acknowledging my own pain, but also helping others to acknowledge their pain. Um, I think we've done that with creating the support group for men. I think we've been able to achieve that. We do that through a couple of Zoom sessions we have every month. Through creating the backpack program, through creating the Gathering of Wolves, all those things were ideas because we just saw that the lack of support that was there for men going through, and we know that because of our spouses, our partners, our wives, that they had seen it. My wife saw. She's like, "You should go do this for other men." Trevor's wife saw it. They're like, "You need to go do this for other men because they need this." So I think that's where the passion and the idea come from creating Man Up to Cancer, was through our own journeys and acknowledging that.
I think that's awesome. I wholeheartedly believe, and I've been telling this everybody. This September will be 25 years I was diagnosed with HIV, and from the very
Yeah,
beginning, it was about how can I take this moment, this tough moment for myself, learn
yeah,
from it, and use it to share with other folks.
yeah.
Not that it will stop them from going through their journey, but so that they know they're not alone.
Right, right.
I don't know if you agree with this. Some folks think I've heard folks tell me, "Well, why do you keep asking people about their hard times? Like, you don't they want to put that aside?" I'm like, no, you want to learn from the tough moments so
Yeah,
that you become a better person. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. 100%. 100%. And I will say, I one thing I really love over the last year or so is has been our partnership with Cheeky Charity. And I cannot remember his name. A gentleman passed away named, I think his name was Mike. He and his partner, I was gonna, so earlier I said that I was at the Colorectal Golf Classic in
Yeah,
Arizona. And I think his name was Mike, who passed away. His partner was actually at
the
the
cover. Yeah,
golf tournament. Yeah, and I actually, so during the last gathering of wolves that you attended, Mike was supposed to be there,
yeah,
and he had gotten sick on the way.
yeah.
And I had spoken with his partner, and we were texting back and forth, trying to make sure that Mike, because I think Mike ended up in the hospital and wasn't able to attend. Um, but then I never met his partner in person until the connection with
The
Cheeky
cover.
Charity, and they brought him to the. So that meant so much to me that we were able to have that experience with him, that we were able to share that time with him, and I think his partner brought a picture of Mike at the table, so he felt like he was there. And I really believe, and I am 100% believe that the universe brings people together for a reason. And I think that that moment, that time was important. And it was great to have that time with them, and to be able to just acknowledge to one another, who Mike was, but also to really get to be able to hug his partner was important to me. It was just sort of at that moment. I can't explain it, but it even made me realize the greater purpose that I have and with the work I do. Right,
Yeah,
because that wouldn't have happened if we weren't doing this work. So
yeah.
it's very important.
It's the that fine line between you can be a victim or
Right,
you can be a success, and you
right,
get to decide at that moment where it is. And I I know I've been criticized for saying this, and if I could get through it, anybody can.
right.
But I believe that you can get through it on your own terms. You can get it's your timeline, it's your journey, however you do
Yeah,
it. But if you're watching this, whether you're male or female, in between,
yeah,
whatever cancer you're going through, there is a support group out there for you. And if you can't
exactly.
find it, I will put some information up at the end so that you can connect with me and we'll help you find uh, uh, your group, your tribe, your family, however you want to
Yeah,
name it. But there is a group out there for you. And let me tell you, uh, as we were talking about the Garden of the Wolves, when I was when I submitted and I was invited, I was so scared of going. I was like, how am I going to be around 150 men out in the middle of the woods, nowhere? Like no, like I don't do that.
yeah,
So I walked into that, and just with folks um, to know that well, I suffer from social anxiety first of all, so it's very difficult for me to comprehend being around people that I don't know.
yeah.
But this is the career that I chose anyway. But
Right.
walking into that campground, and there were some people that I already knew from other
Yeah,
conferences.
yeah,
The For me, the most impactful thing of the whole weekend was the second night, the campfire with the photos and naming the the ceremony of the names,
yeah,
and which I still to this day, it's only been like it's a year, but I tell people about it that it was so sad for me to hear people's names and there was no bio, there was no story about who they were,
yeah.
and that just broke my heart. And I was like, I don't want anybody that I come near or to who's going through cancer to not have a bio. I want everybody.
Right,
I want like have their lives be have meaning. Not that their lives didn't,
right.
but in that moment, like all we had was their name, and I was like, I don't
Yeah,
want to be just the name. Um,
yeah.
so anyway, it just to let you know, and the staff,
Right,
the leadership know that that for me was like, okay, I need to I need to step up my game. And
right.
what can I do to make sure that we get the word out? Which is why these shows are being created.
Exactly. And it's tough because these men come to us at every walk of life. Like every somewhere blue hats, somewhere red hats politically, um, every sexual orientation, every they're all coming from different angles, different. But what I'm the most proudest of is that we put everything down to support one another in this fight with cancer. Um, and their approach can be different. There are men like we have the 3,200 men in the group. I think about 2,100 are active members. So there's still 1,000 men in the group who really don't. I get private messages every once in a while from a guy who'll tell me, I don't really post or comment in the group, but I really appreciate the stories. And a lot of times these men will pass and we don't know. Like we'll find out. I remember a while back I was searching, for some reason I was searching for a member, and then I just found out he had passed, but because he just was one of those members that just didn't wasn't very active, right? So a lot of times, you know, members come to us and they look for different ways of support, and all we can do is put that out there and offer it, and it's up to them to how they accept it, as well.
So we've come to the point of the show where I ask my guests to share some words of wisdom with the audience. So, Joe Bullock, what words of wisdom do you have to share?
um, I think if you're going through this fight, just don't go through it alone. Find a support system. I know, for some people that could be just a neighbor who you just feel like you can open up to. Some of that might be, joining a support group like ours, where there's 3,200 men who are going through it. Your circle can be very small, very large, but just don't go through it alone, right? And seek that support, because I think it can make a big difference in how you approach cancer, and really how you do a treatment. So I would say that just don't go it alone. Just don't go it alone. Find support.
Just a reminder for everybody, this is the website. Go to manuptocancer.org. You can get all kinds of information there. Let me read y'all the Man Up to Cancer is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping men avoid isolation during the cancer journey. They offer peer-to-peer support, an annual retreat, a chemo backup program, and local chapters, all geared towards improving the quality of life of their members and changing the way men go through cancer. And this program is a collaboration between Little Mexican Productions Inc. and Chiqui Charity. And Chiqui Charity is, Chiqui Charity, we aim to create a safe, inclusive spaces for LGBTQ plus individuals and underdeserved communities facing colorectal and anal cancers. And I'm proud to be the advocacy director. So for more information, feel free to email me at dggarza@chiquicharity.org. My work number is 951-708-0989. You can visit us at chiquicharity.org for more information and to find out how you can support us too. So if you want to donate to any of the causes, feel free to visit our website. We're down to the last 10 minutes. Where are you now, Joe?
Well, I'm no evidence of disease. I actually had my last visit with my oncologist last January 2024. But the interesting fact on that is that so I went through 5 years of thinking, hoping that I would be cancer free. And we all as cancer patients go through anxiety, right? That's scan anxiety. And I had gone through about 3 years of not really feeling that, because I just made assumptions that, oh, I think I'll be fine. They're always clear. My blood work is always great. And I remember I went for that last scan, and at Duke Cancer Center, they have a Panera right there. So I'd gone and got my scans, my blood work, and I told my wife, I'm going to go to Panera and grab a bagel and some coffee and just wait, because I wasn't going to meet with my oncologist for 2 hours later. Well, then my phone just blows up, and my wife was like, have you looked at your My Chart? And I was like, no, it's fine. It's like, no, you need to look at your My Chart. There's a blip. There's something on your liver. So I was just sitting there, full blown, suddenly realizing, you've got to be kidding me that I've been cancer free for 5 years. I knew the percentages, like I knew there was still that 10 or 15% chance that I could have a reoccurrence. And so I got with my oncologist, and so we decided, yes, let's do an MRI, and let's just make sure that I ended up being an MRI machine for like 2 hours. So he decided we're just gonna check everything out. He's like, I want to reassure you that you are cancer free. Because he even said at that point he thought it was just like a little cyst and really wasn't. So I guess the radiology tech had made it out to be bigger than what it was or something. Um, so, but like I said, scanxiety is real, and just because you're cancer free doesn't mean you're free of cancer. So, that was the acknowledgement on that, and it ended up the MRI showed it wasn't cancer, everything was fine, but I went through a week of really waiting for that MRI result to come back if my cancer had metastasized. So, an acknowledge of that is that just because you might be in NED for like 2 or 3 years, you still live with the anxieties of cancer and waiting for those screenings and going through the blood work. I think a lot of people make assumptions that cancer free means you're cancer free, but you really aren't free of cancer.
Yeah. It's
Um,
unfortunate that once you buy into this membership, this club,
right,
yeah,
right,
it's like the mob. You never
right,
leave.
right. Exactly, 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 exactly.
So, what's coming up for Man Up to Cancer?
So, like I said, we are in mid-April. We'll be opening up a whole new platform. We're excited about that. This way, we'll be able to reach more men. They won't have to be on Facebook. They could actually join a community that's off Facebook through our website. Um, we're in the search. We are currently interviewing. We spent the last 2 months, reaching out through different LinkedIn and different um, avenues to find 300 candidates for this executive director position. We've gotten that narrowed down to 10 finalists, and we're going to spend the next month interviewing those 10 and then we're hoping by probably by midsummer to actually have this person in place and start transitioning them into the community and working with the current staff and board and start really building building out the larger community working with this new executive director. So that is our plan for the next at least 6 months to a year
Cool.
going forward.
And we have dates already for the next
Yeah,
gathering of
so
wolves.
the Gathering of Wolves will be September 11th through the 14th, and we're hoping to have between 2 and 250 at this year's retreat.
Wow.
Beautiful campus. It's located at the Pocono Springs camp in up in the Poconos Mountains of Virginia. I mean of Pennsylvania. And the camp itself will hold around 500. It's a beautiful campus, so we're hoping to be around 250, 2 to 250 attendees
Wow,
this year.
that's a big
Yeah.
number. It's a lot of
Yes.
dudes.
Yes. A
It's a
lot
lot
of
of dudes.
dudes.
It's a
A
lot of
lot of
dudes in
dudes.
one place. But let me
Yeah.
tell you,
Yeah.
folks, I was there last year, and it was definitely my dirty dancing moment. I felt like
Yeah.
baby in those cabins, and so it was my little fantasy come true. I loved it.
Yeah.
Um, one last words of for because of the support that you had, and because of the way, can we throw out some words of wisdom for a caregiver out there, that a caregiver for somebody going through colorectal cancer?
Continue to be persistent. I know my wife. It was hard for her. It was hard for her to know how. Even my wife being an RN, because she was an RN, like she medically understood everything that I needed to do, but it was the emotional trauma that she didn't know how to deal with. And so, just continue to encourage your patient to get support, whether it's through encouraging them to seek therapy. I've had a lot of the caregivers reach out to me, and I'll just send information to the patient just to let them know, here, this is available for you. Um, but I would say just continue to encourage that patient to get support, whether it's through Man Up to Cancer or through therapy at a local cancer center, something to give them support, to give them
That's
support.
all right.
Yeah.
So for everybody out there, if you want to reach Joe, you can check him out. Go to the Men Up to Cancer website and
Yeah.
email him from there. You can contact him there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. I really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
And let me put you in the green room for a second. Don't go anywhere. I'm going
Okay.
to say goodbye to you before you go.
Okay.
But
Awesome.
let me just say goodbye. So for everybody watching, thank you so much for joining us on this special Put It Together talking about colorectal cancer. If you're watching us again on Facebook and LinkedIn, this is on replay. So if you missed any part of it, you can watch it from the beginning. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also scroll down and hit that subscribe button. It'll let you know whenever there's a new show on the air and you can rewatch it. Unfortunately, this does not stay saved on Instagram. But if you're watching us on Instagram, go over to Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Reminder, next Friday, March 21st, we will be talking to an anal cancer survivor, talking about her journey through anal cancer, and I'll be able to share a little bit of my story. So please come join us for that. And join us on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. for our regular Put It Together stories, which this week I have a very special guest and good friend of mine, Guy Anthony. He's an HIV advocate and designer coming to talk about his life as an advocate and how he now designs his own bags, and I'm excited to talk to him. So for now, I want to thank Joe for joining us. I want to thank all of the folks over at Men Up to Cancer for all the great work that they do. They have definitely set up a space where I feel welcome, I feel safe, I feel heard, and I know that I have a group of guys that understand what I'm going through and can always be there to help me out whenever I don't have the energy to do it for myself. So for everybody and all the staff of Men Up to Cancer, thank you for all the hard work that you do. I love you, and I am ready with more butt chokes for the next gathering of the wolves, and I'll be there ready to entertain. For now, I want to thank all of you for watching. Please join us and leave comments or questions, and we'll see you next time. For now, this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together. Bye-bye.